welcome to CIO News. I am Khushbu, Soni, your host for the broadcast and chief editor at CIO News. This is our exclusive interview series on the topic of digital transformation on the edge, powered by Tata Communications. It is a recorded session and will be available on our website, that is cionews.co.in, and our CIO News LinkedIn handle. It gives me an immense pleasure in introducing my guest for today. He's Ashwin Kolte, the industry leader who's worked for more than 23 years in the space of IT. His previous organization, he served as a director and a business unit head at Sears IT and Management Service. Ashwin has spearheaded growth of India Technology Center by bringing in more business and insourced of application infrastructure services from third-party vendors. He saved $1 million for the organization and also set up delivery centers for cost-efficient service delivery with more than 300 associates. His domain specialist includes health insurance for almost 15 years and retail business for almost 8 years. Ashwin, it's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great. Ashwin, we would love to hear, your insights and, your best practices that you've learned over the time and share with our viewers. And with that, I've put my first question to understand, in the last 2 years of the whole COVID era that we've been, what is your thought process? How is digital economy contributing to the way forward of the industry?
Yeah. So as I said, thanks for having me, first of all. So last 2 years have been very, very challenging for the entire industry, in fact, the entire world, because the pandemic has affected the entire world.
Correct.
And with a series of lockdowns, etc. So it was quite challenging for people to step out of their homes or go to offices, etc. And IT industry was no different. So when we had lockdowns all over the world, so it impacted IT industry as well as all other industries like retail industry or transportation industry or banking, insurance industries, etc. Now, being a part of IT organization, there was one apparent advantage that we had with us was that we, being in IT division and being responsible to support the IT systems 24/7 and to ensure their availability, we always had this concept of working from home. While it was basically meant to address any issues which were coming during off time or during irregular time, but then all the employees in the organizations were already set up for working from home. So that came in very handy. So it was not very difficult, although there were challenges with some portions of the organization. For example, the admin division or the transport division or the finance, HR division, where they have to be in office, especially the admin division. But people who are in core technology projects, so it was not very difficult for them to start working from home right from when the pandemic started. Right. So in the organization that I work, we were quick to realize this. And instead of taking chances and asking people to come to office, we were able to quickly move over to work from home, because right. Everybody is provided laptops, everybody has a VPN connection set up. So it was not difficult for the whole organization to move to a work from home model. Almost 97% of the employee base actually moved to work from home model, including HR, finance, etc. Only people who were involved with physical activities like admin, etc. So they were going to office maybe once a while just to make sure that the facility is kept up to date. So this was something which really came in handy as from a COVID perspective. Now there were other implications where the core business, whether it's the retail business or whether it's transportation business, so those came to a standstill. So obviously organizations had to face a lot of impact, revenue impact, etc., because the core business was shut down. So the organizations had different cost cutting measures which the organizations took basically to rationalize the cost and make sure that we'll live to see another day. Right. So this way actually some of the steps were taken. to mitigate that impact of COVID-19.
Right, got it. And my next question is around the adoption to cloud. We've seen there has been a huge acceleration to adoption of
Yes.
cloud in this
Yes.
COVID era. Your thoughts on that, Ashwin? And how did what's your perspective? How did organization really move to this transition? Even in your previous organization, how what was your cloud adoption journey like?
So cloud adoption is very important. I mean, almost it has become indispensable
Right,
because it's very difficult to maintain data centers. I mean, for huge organizations which run into billions of dollars. So there are a lot of cost redundancies and operational overheads basically to operate these data centers. And then nowadays, I mean, last decade or so, cloud technologies have matured so much
right,
that it's very easy for businesses to move on to cloud and save on cost, number one, and number two, operational efficiencies. I mean,
right,
basically what it has allowed the organizations is to focus on their core business, and rather than get into something which could be best left to experts. So for
right.
example, AWS or Google Cloud, or for that matter, Azure. So
Yeah,
all major organizations are moving basically to cloud to save cost, to improve operational efficiencies. And I think cloud is the future. So if you
true.
look at companies like Netflix or McDonald's, etc., so they are
Yeah,
all like fully on cloud. So I
correct.
think that is going to be the future. I mean, security is one important aspect, but I mean, last few years, etc., so all those constraints have been taken care of. So it's
Correct.
quite secure and it's quite safe actually to move to cloud. So that's why all these companies are trying to move to cloud. So even in my previous organizations where I worked, so there also it was a strategic of they had a strategic aim or a strategic goal to move to the cloud, and there was a phased approach whereby everything was, I mean, the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure was moving to cloud.
Right.
So that is something I think is indispensable in the future. So more and
Absolutely.
more companies would actually end up in cloud going forward.
True, very true. And in fact, like you mentioned, while the adoption had accelerated, security was one of the key elements to look at, right? And in this 2 years, suddenly the security was one of the key priorities for all the CIOs and CISOs. So I also wanted to understand what security measures did you take, both from protecting the endpoints, your digital data, and all the digital transactions that would have happened. So what were the security measures, Ashwin, that you suggest?
So one thing is, I think we have very secure VPN connections. I mean, from this endpoint to that endpoint. Uh, those safeguards are already put in place. And number two, there is I mean, um, it depends, but there is also a hybrid model where instead
Right.
of putting everything into cloud,
Yeah.
okay, so there is a hybrid model where some of it still resides on premise and some of it still resides on cloud, and there is a continuous replication happening, so that if there is a security incident or something which threatens one part of the system, then other part of the system is up and running. So that also helps in disaster recovery.
Correct.
So one is securing everything through private connections, and the other is replication and making sure that there is some kind of redundancy and some kind of replication to set up, so that even if there is an impact, it doesn't kind of cascade to everything, or we don't lose everything. There is something to fall back upon and basically back it up.
Sure, absolutely. Ashwin, what are the other innovations, from a digital transformation perspective that, organizations can look at, in the coming years? So, your thoughts are probably on that.
One is definitely cloud, which I said is indispensable. Now, in terms of others, I mean, can you elaborate your question? So are you looking for any
So
specific?
innovations in terms of AI, ML, RPA, while the cloud adoption has accelerated, so these other solutions, innovations that that can be looked at.
So machine learning and AI definitely, I mean, glad for pointing that out. So machine learning and AI are the next big things.
Right.
Because especially for data intensive industries, for example, banks, insurance, or retail, I mean, which deal with humongous amount of data. For example, a retail industry deals with like millions and millions of daily records. For that example, banking transactions are also in millions and millions every day. So it becomes very important to adopt this machine learning and AI technologies to basically carve out important insights from that data.
Right.
So definitely AI and ML has become mainstream now. I think those are the happening technologies right now.
Right. Right.
So I think the future is very bright for AI and ML.
Absolutely.
And all the organizations probably would have to adopt to some level of AI and ML going forward, because traditional methods of uh, storing data or analyzing data would not work, as the data grows into terabytes and petabytes and
True.
hexabytes.
True.
So there has to be some advanced way of dealing with that data and basically extracting information or intelligence out of them to make prudent business decisions. So AI and ML is another big trend, so to speak, going
Absolutely.
forward.
Very true. Also, Ashwin, I wanted to ask you that a lot of organizations, key priority was collaboration, quality, and good providing a wow experience in terms of collaboration between their employees, customers, and vendors. So, what were the best practices you followed in these times, to provide an effective collaboration and communication platform to connect with employees and customers, basically?
So now last 2 years almost, we have been working from home. So
Right,
from an employee perspective, there were a lot of employee connects that happened, which were formal as well as informal. And
right,
then the rewards and recognitions programs, which are typically there. So all those were not discontinued. So
right,
in fact, everything shifted to the online mode. So what
correct,
used to happen offline started becoming online. And
correct.
in addition to that, because employees were kind of losing that, what do you say, that comfort level of working with each other, seeing each
Uh,
other, etc.
uh,
So we, so there was additional impetus to come up with some employee connect programs where employees can come together over a cup of coffee and just discuss something. Need not necessarily be official, but also something which they can share at a personal level, or some hobby that they picked up or something. So lot of those things, rewards, etc., were shifted to online mode. Now, as far as customers is concerned, now for a retail industry, the end customers are the shoppers.
correct.
So definitely online e-commerce actually picked up.
Right,
So while earlier people were doing both, I mean, there was e-commerce and people also used to go to stores and buy stuff, but especially during lockdown that reduced. So the
correct,
focus on e-commerce increased. So
correct.
definitely, so similarly, the company also shifted its gears towards e-commerce and
Right,
things which actually could be delivered at home.
right,
So home delivery, or uh, reaching out to customers, going to their homes and doing certain things, or fixing certain things, or installing certain things. So that got shifted. Well,
correct.
customer, rather than customer coming to the stores, I mean, the company started going to the end customers wherever it made
True,
sense or wherever it was required.
true, true, very true. Great. I think these have been wonderful insights. It brings me to the last question, Ashwin, is
Mhm.
any best practices, any do's and don'ts that you would want to suggest to our viewers, our listeners from the IT industry, or the CIO, CTOs, any do's and don'ts?
I mean, I'm not sure if I'm qualified to give do and don'ts. Um, but I think going forward, work from home would probably become the norm. In
Yeah,
fact, if we look at TCS also, they have, I think they have declared that by 2025, more than 70% of the workforce will work from home. So I think that trend is going to catch on. And it can also bring some amount of cost optimization to the companies, because then they don't have to maintain so many facilities and all that.
Correct.
So that is one trend I definitely see happening. And second is, I think India is poised. I mean, it's already a major player in IT sector, but I think it's going to expand. I mean, it's going to grow exponentially.
Correct.
Given cloud or artificial intelligence, and going forward, I think IoT is going to come in a big way, Internet of Things. So
Right.
that is next big trend. So from do's and don't perspective, I think our government or our society, I mean, we have to make sure our educational curriculum and other trainings which are there, so they are more and more geared towards making people more suitable for the industry, because we have been hearing a lot that our education system, I mean, it creates graduates, but not many are like very suitable for the industry. So if you can do something about it and make sure that the graduates that we are churning out from our industry, I mean, they are like more suitable to the industry, they can hit the ground running, something of that sort,
Correct.
then I think this next 15-20 years is going to be a boom time for IT industry,
Right.
with more products, cloud, more products, AI, IoT, all these trends coming. So I think India is well poised to grab these opportunities, provided that we get the basics right and we have
Correct.
a consistent focus towards it.
Very true. True. Great. I think, Ashwin, these have been wonderful insights. And thank you once again for joining us on this platform and sharing your best practices and your experience with us. It was a pleasure to have you and a great interaction.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.